And good morning to everybody. Um, all right. Um, I'm going to be talking a little bit about job search this morning, um, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Um, and let me do that right now. Okay. So a couple of things before we get started is that one, this is going to be recorded and posted, so you can take notes if you want to, but also you can just know that you can sit down and just listen to the content. And if you have questions or if you are unclear about something and would like to follow up on it, you can go back and scrub through the video at a later point and see me talking about this again. Um, Also, you'll see that I do have a slide deck prepared. I'm sorry if some of you find those things boring, but I think it's probably the best way to keep most students engaged and involved. As I'm going to be talking a lot and having a visual to kind of pair with that, I think makes it a little bit less monotonous than just listening to me talk. And so, as Rachel said, my name is Richard Sylvester. I'm the Assistant Director for Experiential Opportunities. That means I do a lot of various different things, but most importantly, I'm a career coach, and that's going to be the capacity of which I'm going to be doing this presentation today. And as Rachel said, this presentation, when I originally created, I called it How to Job Search Like a Superhero, because anybody who knows me knows that I love comic books and love superheroes and the MCU, even though this is a lot of DC characters. And I thought it was just a really cool way to kind of keep everybody engaged with something that I really like doing. But I also realized that now when this presentation is taking place, we are in the middle of a pandemic, which is why I added during COVID, because I think that if we didn't actually talk about the crisis that's going on right now, where students are right now, we would kind of be jerks and we kind of wouldn't be serving you the best way possible. And so before we get into the presentation itself, I do want to start, and I always like to start talking about expectations, because I think that it's very important for you to get as much out of it as possible. You have a clear expectation of what you're going to be receiving for the content. And so the very first thing I like to just say up front, I know it's going to be obvious, but you are not going to leave this presentation with a job. That's not what this is. We are going to be teaching you about how to do and conduct a more effective job search, and one particular method of job searching, which will probably help you become a little bit more efficient as you're looking and starting to search and apply for jobs. Two, I think it's also important to let you know that we do not have all of the answers. Um, yes, again, I know that may sound a little bit ridiculous to say out loud, but I think especially, I think it's important to say it, because this pandemic, it is affecting all of us for the first time. Those of us who are professionals and are a little bit earlier, older than you, may have some more tools that lets us be a little bit better equipped on how to deal and how to manage this. But we are no means perfect. We do not have all the answers, and the situation continues to change and develop very quickly. Um, and so we're going to do the best that we can, but just understand that if you find better answers someplace else, or if you find different answers from somebody in the industry that you're looking to apply for, please take that advice, because they know their industries better than we do. So the method of job search I'm going to be talking about is called the LAMP, L-A-M-P. It is not the only way to conduct a job search. It is one way. You may find that after we go through it, you do not particularly like it, it doesn't work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, that's totally fine. But we found this way to be very effective and translates very well with a lot of the teachings and learnings that you have learned already at K. And that's why why I'm teaching this. And the last thing to say is that it does not actually take away the work. Some of you may remember at the very beginning of the year when we could still all be together in person and we had the senior welcome back in Dalton Theater. I got up at the time, I said, you know what, it's important to actually start your job search process early, because even at that time when the economy was at a very good place, conventional wisdom was saying that you should probably expect to start your search 6 to 9 months from beginning of where you would like to begin. So at that point, if you would like to have a job by graduation, starting around the beginning of the school year gave you the most advantageous time to be starting and transitioning very quickly. As things are going to be a little bit challenging due to COVID and some industries undergoing hiring freezes and things like that, this more so than ever applies now. Job searching takes a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a very lengthy amount of time. And so even though I'm going to be teaching you about a way to make your job searches more efficient, it doesn't take away the fact that like it's still going to take a lot of effort on your part to actually conduct a job search. So before I get into the actual job searching and the LAMP method, the first thing I actually wanted to do right up top is address how to actually job search during a pandemic. That way, if those of you who have joined who may just want to get that content at the top, you can kind of get this right away and then kind of drop out. And if you want to, you can check out the rest of the recorded video later. So the first thing I want you guys to know is that a lot of companies are still hiring. I know it may seem like it. I know you're constantly hearing the news about so many industries have cratered and going on job freezes, and a lot of industries are going out of business and so on and so forth. And those things are true. But there are a lot of companies that are still hiring. And so I want to show you some resources. The first one being a blog post by Handshake, the same Handshake that you use to apply to jobs. And this is continually updated. You'll see that it has the newly updated job postings on here. And if I scroll down to the bottom, it was updated just yesterday with the next update coming in a couple of weeks. And so this is regularly updated about organizations that are currently hiring. And you'll see you can sort it by industry, you can sort it by location, by company name, you can sort it by like how many industries or how many pages or how many positions you want to display at one time. And there are over 500 entries on this. And so like I said, if you're looking and just want to know like, okay, I'm trying to, and I continue to like feel like I'm running up against a wall, who is actually hiring that I know is hiring, this is a resource that you can use to actually find individuals that are actually hiring. And I will put this link, do I have the option to do this? Yes, I will. I am going to drop this link into the chat right now. And so that is there for you. The second link I will post is there's this website called Candor, and it's updated live and we'll probably see some live updates while we're doing this, like that exactly right there. And so you'll see this is a continually updated spreadsheet. It's updated live, it's crowdsourced, and you can sort it, you can filter it, but it gives you an idea of who is hiring and who is currently on hiring freezes. And so if there's somebody you're considering applying to, you can actually go in here and do a search and see like, is this company actually still hiring during this time? As well as if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see and kind of like based on the tracking that they're doing with this spreadsheet, you can see like which industries that as reporting by them are actually still hiring and actually still doing hiring freezes and layoffs. One of the things that I will say is that this is a resource that the CCPD we recommend. And when I say this resource, I mean this stuff here and this stuff here. If you click through something else over here on the sides, we haven't looked at and vetted any of these other resources. The only resource that we're actually promoting is this one right here. And I will also drop that link into the chat as Rachel's also doing. So you can find that as well. The next link is from a website called JobScan. And if I scroll down, you'll see if you're just looking for places and jobs that are hiring right now to help you start earning money right now, you can see that they have posted some of these things right here. As well as if I scroll down a little bit, here are some different tips that you can use as you're approaching your job search. Again, everything on this page, we kind of okay. Once you start clicking off onto the other stuff, that stuff isn't vetted by us. But also if you click on this link right now of companies hiring right now, you'll see that this looks incredibly familiar because they found where other individuals on other websites were doing the similar crowdsourcing, and they compiled it into one place. And so again, it allows you, if you're searching for something, you can find this stuff right in one place that's easy to pick this stuff up on. And the last link I will drop in here right quick is this resource through GitHub. And as you scroll down, you'll see that there is a lot of internship stuff in here. They do have full-time positions in here as well, but I realize it is very internship heavy. But the reason I wanted to include this one is that if you have underclassmen friends that are looking for internships or trying to figure out if their internship is still hiring, this is a great resource that you can share with them. But also to kind of give you a sense that, like, again, there's no one place that has all the answers. You're gonna have to be doing a lot of work and compiling data from a lot of different places. And so these are 4 different resources that you can use to actually gauge right now who is actually hiring, and that's gonna help you in your job searching process right now. Also, the place where all this stuff is compiled, and some of you may recognize this, is through the CCPD. Rachel at the top, who introduced me, has been doing a fantastic job of maintaining our webpage and maintaining resources. And all the resources that I talked about were pulled from things that Rachel has compiled. And so this is the place, more than anything I will say, keep it here, keep it locked in. If you want to find out where the most up-to-date resources to help you with your job search right now, going to our webpage and linked right off of the main page is the COVID-19 Resource Hub. You can find everything that I talked about linked right over here. So let me close this stuff out. And so that's the very first thing to know. Like I said, a lot of companies are still hiring. It might not seem like it, but they are. The second thing is that networking now is more important than ever. If you've been connecting with our department for a long time, you know that we have been preaching about the importance and the value of networking. And like I said, now more than ever, helping to turn yourself from an unknown into a known, helping to get valuable recommendations, to get yourself in front of recruiters, talking to alums that have graduated in the class of 08 when they were graduating in the midst of recession. Those individuals are more than ever incredibly valuable and important for you to talk to. And also they're going to be great resources for how to successfully navigate a job search within that organization. And so if you haven't done it before, or you have been nervous about it, we cannot say it enough. Now more than ever is so valuable and so important for you to be talking to the alumni network, networking with them, and they're going to be able to give you the best and most up-to-date and accurate information of what the picture looks like as you're trying to transition to those job markets. Today's presentation is not about networking, but if you have any questions on actually how to network, we have a presentation that I did with another one of our career coaches, Jackie Schroeds, on how to network. That resource and that video is available in multiple parts, so you can go check that out, or you can sign up for a one-on-one appointment with a career coach, and we can talk you and walk you through how to actually network. Number 3 is that it's less about finding a job and more about building skills. One of the questions that we're getting right now frequently is that, it's very difficult to find a job, or sometimes it may be difficult to enter the industry that you would like to, because your industry is potentially going under a hiring freeze or things of that nature. And I can understand and empathize. That stuff is incredibly frustrating. And the thing I always tell students, like, well, if you can't get into the thing that you necessarily want to do and you have to do something else, what you should be focusing on are what are the skills that you can do in this other job or this other industry that allows you to transfer those skills back into your primary industry and allows you to put things on your resume, so that once we get past COVID, that you can be incredibly competitive as an applicant, right? One of the things, and I'll give you an example. As somebody who, like a lot of you, once upon a time, I did a lot of frontline retail work. And one of the skills that you develop in that is a lot of customer service skills, right? And frequently I talk to students about that stuff, they kind of like roll their eyes and dismiss it, but customer service is actually very important. It's an important skill because when you're working in retail or in food service and you're doing that type of customer service, you're frequently working with a lot of people that sometimes are upset, may have a chip on their shoulder, may be rude or kind of a jerk to you. You still have to know how to be professional and work through them and continue to give them the best service. And that is a skill that actually trends well, for example, into my role right now, which is like when I have to give students bad news sometimes, or sometimes I have to talk with a parent when they may be upset with the college, right? Those skills were directly transferable from jobs that you would just look at and say like, well, they're just kind of whatever retail jobs, into an actual career position. And so that's the next thing I will say is that, like, you know what, if you cannot find and are able to transition to your career right away and you start looking for jobs, it's less about finding um, the perfect job and more about like, okay, what skills that you can actually find in a job that are going to continue to help you fill out your resume so that when you can actually begin to apply to your dream industry or your preferred industry, you're going to be a competitive candidate. Number four, your first job typically is likely temporary. So according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 55.3% of recent graduates will leave their first job within a year, right? And this was pulled from statistics from 2018. And as you guys know from doing your SIPs, that means that this research was probably gathered in 2017. And research that's, 3 to 5 years is considered to be current research, right? And so even if you were able to, if there was no pandemic going on, if you were able to transition to your ideal job, half of you would leave that job within the first year, right? Um, Also, on average, you are going to end up working about 12 different jobs during your working life. This is also a statistic pulled by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And when we talk about your working life, that is a span of about 47 years, with the average age of retirement being about 65. And so that means that you're going to be changing jobs about every 3.9, so about every 4 years, right? And so again, I say this not to be a jerk, but I say this to say that even if you aren't able to transition to your career and your ideal career right now, you aren't behind, you aren't delayed, you're not off track. This is normal. A lot of times, the first thing that you're going to do right after college isn't going to be the thing that you're going to be doing for forever. It's not even going to be your dream job for most of you. It's just going to be your first job. And so if you have to take something else, and the last thing I'll say in here is if you have to take a job just to kind of pay the bills, that's okay. Companies understand that, especially now more than ever during this pandemic. And I will also add in here is that, like, it sometimes can feel like, you know what, this is very insular and this is something that is very difficult and challenging for you. And the thing that I will also encourage you to remember is that, like, this is something that is happening to the entire world right now. We are all going through this at the same time, even though the challenges that you may be facing are unique. But that means that employers are going to be understanding because they realize that this is something that they're seeing regularly, right? And so if you have to take if you have to take a job just to pay the bills, that's perfectly okay. Again, just like I said with number three, it's important to think about what skills are you going to be able to get doing that job that's going to allow you to continue to fill out and develop your resume. And even if you can't find, looks like we have a question coming in. Even if those jobs are not jobs that are going to be highly desired, and maybe they don't actually have the skills that you're looking for that you're going to be able to put on your resume, even that's fine, because employers understand that, like, yes, you have to eat, yes, you have to continue to pay your rent, yes, you have to pay the bills, and they know that stuff, and that's okay, because like I said, those jobs are temporary. And even if this pandemic, until we're able to find a cure and things get back to a full normal, even if we are a year or two out from that, again, when your working life is spanning, even from now at graduation, another 40 years, yes, it may be frustrating, but this is still going to be temporary. And the last thing I'll say is that the CCPD is here to support you even after you graduate. The resources of the college don't expire, and our services in our office don't expire. Just earlier this week and last week, we have been pretty steadily working with recent and sometimes further out alumni. I just had a career coaching appointment with an alum that needed some help on a mock interview, and she later got back in contact with me, and she's continuing in her second round of an interview, and she got one offer and is continuing to interview for another position. And so I just want to let you know that you are not in this alone. Even after you graduate, if you are struggling, if you are needing to find help, we're here to continue to help you and support you. And there is no shame or judgment in coming back and asking for help, because we all need help from one time or another. And that is part of our job too. We are incredibly serious and very passionate about continuing to work with our alums and to continue to help our alums. So even after graduation, if you need help with your job search, please get back in contact with us. You can email our office, you can set up a career coaching appointment, and we will help you to the best of our ability. So with that being said, we are going to transition out of this section, and now I'm going to start talking a little bit more about the full content about how to actually do this LAMP job search. And so the goals of this presentation are pretty simple. First is that by the end of this presentation, you're going to know what LAMP stands for, and you're going to actually know how to actually do this job search. You're going to understand how to use it effectively. And then lastly, you are going to leave with some tips and tools on how to actually conduct your job search, some of which I've already given you already. So the whole goal really is to take the job search process from being something that's super stressful and to make you feel a little bit more confident as you move forward into this, knowing that you actually have the tools now to be able to do this a little bit more effectively. So let's talk about LAMP. What does this thing actually stand for, right? It is an acronym that stands for List, Alumni and People, Motivations, and Postings. I am just going to state again that this is being recorded, so I am going to be moving through this pretty quickly. So if you're not able to keep up and take notes fully, like that's okay. You can go back and watch the recording about anything that you may have missed. So to do this actual process, you're going to need a couple things. One, you're going to need access to spreadsheet software. You can use Google Sheets like I did. I'll show you my example when I did this. So you don't actually, everything that you need, you probably already have. You're going to need access to a LinkedIn profile. At this point in time, you probably should have a LinkedIn account. If you don't, you can always schedule a career coaching appointment. We can talk to you how to create a very strong profile, or you can just go and sign up for one on your own. It's completely free to do so. Please do not buy into the paid version of LinkedIn at this time. And 3, you're going to need a personal email account. All right. So let's get started. And the very first thing that you're going to do with this is that you are going to open up your spreadsheet software and you are going to make a list. I want you to make a list of as many companies that you would like to work for. And when I say as many companies, you want to make a pretty big and robust list, right? You'll see in here, I put a minimum of 20 and a minimum of 40. And the thing I always say is that during this time, you don't want to do a lot of deep research. You almost want to do this as kind of like a stream of consciousness exercise. If there are companies that you've heard of, if there are companies that you've ever dreamed of, their competitors, right? You just want to create a huge list. And I'm just going to tell you now, the bigger the list you start with, the better of a job you're going to have at the end of this, because at a certain point, you're going to end up deleting half of the list, and that's fine. So the bigger the list that you can start with, please go ahead and create that list. Some of the things that you can do to actually help you as you're trying to figure out how to fill out a list of 40 employers, because you probably can't name 40 employers off the top of your head. What are your dream employers, right? What are employers that alumni work at? You know, and that's where something like the alumni tool on LinkedIn can really help you, because you can figure out that like there are certain companies that we have a lot of employers working at. Which companies have open jobs, open postings? You could do a posting search and say like, does this company have openings? If they do, put it on the list. And what are the competitors and trends, right? And so, for example, if you wanted to work as part of, if you were majoring in tech and you wanted to work on like the back end as a developer at an organization like Lyft, then Uber should also be on your list. Why? Because they're in the same industry, right? And so the goal here, like I said, is that you really want to create a big, long, and deep, robust list. And to give you an example of how this looks, this is a screen cap of when I made my list, but I will also, at this time, I'm going to drag over here. This is the Google Sheet that I made before I started to develop this presentation. Originally, I wanted to go through and do this myself to see how this actually worked. And so this is the list that I made the first time. Because I'm in higher ed, you'll see that these are all other higher ed institutions. I simply I named this list, and I just made my list. And so I will also say that you do not necessarily have to do this all at one time. You can, but I would say that, you know what, if you want to just go ahead and generate the list and then you kind of want to take a break, it's like, well, you know, I've done enough. Okay, that's fine. You can put it down, come and do the next step later. But again, I would say that, again, the big thing to remember here is that no deep research, and this should probably take you about an hour maximum. Because again, you're not doing a lot of deep research. You're not saying like, oh, who works there? What's their mission statement? What do they do? No, you're just generating the list. After that, we're getting down into the alumni and people. So this is who do you know? And so what you're going to do on this step is that you're going to go back through that list and you're going to sit back and say like, do I actually have a connection at any of these companies, right? And so what that looks like is that you are going to go and you are going to open up a second sheet. You're going to copy your list over, and you'll see when I click over here, it's the exact same list, exact same order, right? I didn't change anything. All I did is I just added this. And again, this is where you can use something like LinkedIn, the alumni directory. You can use something like the alumni directory of the college. And you're just going to go through, and again, you're not doing a lot of deep research. You're not saying like, oh, what department do they have in there? No, all you're saying is like, do you know anybody at all in your network that works at that organization? Yes or no? That is all you're doing right now, right? At some point, you are going to want to start networking and talking to these people. But again, you're not doing that right now. All you're doing is you're just going and figuring out like, do I actually know somebody that works this company? And if they do, you're just going to mark a yes or no for each organization. And once you get done with that, like I said, you're going to have a list that looks like this. Great. And then at this point, again, if you want to continue moving on to the next step, you can go ahead and do that. Or maybe you put this down and say like, you know what, I've done enough. I'm going to take a break for an hour, or I'm going to come back tomorrow and continue going on. The next step is motivations. And to me, this is actually where I think it really gets interesting, because this is where we begin to do the deep research and we begin to figure out like, what is it that you're actually looking for in a job, right? One of the things that you probably haven't considered is that when it comes to your working life in the world of work, there are a lot of different factors and motivations that make one job more desirable than the other. Potentially right now, you're just saying like, listen, I just have bills to pay, so I'll just take any job that pays me $50,000 and up. And maybe that's true, but I think that we can do a little bit better than that. And this is what helps us. This is what this stage does. It helps us begin to uncover what are some of those motivations that makes a job more desirable than the other. And so the thing I say here, the question I'm asking is that what motivates you to choose a particular job? The way this step is going to work is that you are going to, and I'll go back over to my spreadsheet, is that you'll see across the top here is that you're going to create a list of motivations. And the thing I always tell students at this is that one, you are going to want to be honest at this step. Nobody's going to see this list but you, but the only way this step actually works is if you were completely honest. And so you'll see here is that like, you know what, I'm a person that I don't particularly love snow. I know it's really crazy that I still live in Michigan, but you know what, I'm not going to live here for forever, right? So I put weather on my list because if I was ever going to leave this job, I am not living at another place that actually has snow. Friends and family you'll see on here. It's important for me to actually earn a certain degree of a high salary. You'll see I put cost of living in here because it's important for me. Like, I don't want to live something that's crazy expensive because I can't afford to do that. And then comfort here is a little bit nebulous. Like, to me, it comes down to things of just like, how drivable is the city? How easy it is to get around? What kind of amenities are available, right? And all these things kind of come together to be my motivations. The things I recommend during this step is that you want to have a minimum of 5 and you want to get to a maximum of 10. Now, you can go higher than 10 if you want to. The reason why I say you want to have a maximum of 10 is because typically by the time you start getting toward 10, it becomes a little bit unwieldy to kind of do the math on this stuff. And so keeping it between 5 and 10, I find is a really good place. And like I said, it's more important than anything else is to be honest. If you're not actually truly honest about the things that matter to you, then it's not going to work. If it's important for you to be close to friends and family, put that on a list. If it's important to be close to a girlfriend or boyfriend, if it's important to you to live in a certain city or a certain state, put that stuff on the list. And then what you're going to do is that you're going to go through, as you saw here, and then you're going to rank every single job by 5 is very good and 1 is bad, right? And again, there's no real mathematical way to do this, or no true mathematical way to do this. It's about what feels right to you. So for example, I have this stuff over here in places like Arizona, which is incredibly sunny, in California as a 5. I put Kalamazoo College because it's in Michigan at a 3, and I put George Washington University, which is in Washington, D.C. at a 2. Now, typically, honestly, Washington, D.C. gets a little bit milder winters than we do. So you could sit back and say, like, well, why did you do that versus a 2 here or a 3 here? Like, it just kind of what felt right to me, right? Same thing with this stuff. As I go through and sit back and say, like, I put 1 here for friends for the University of Arizona because I don't really have any friends that live in the state. But I literally have 1 second cousin, but yet I put it at a 5. Why? Because that just felt right to me, right? But this is a place where you go now, and up until this point, you've heard me say, like, you're not doing any deep research. This is the time where you actually start doing the deep research. Once you actually get your column together, this is where you're going to start going and looking at every single one of these organizations and saying, like, how do they stack up? And then with some trickery of, as you do this stuff, you're going to basically do the auto sum for the row, and then you're going to sort it like I did. And then at this point, you're going to delete half of your list. And the reason why, and that's why I said it's important to start with a big list at the beginning, is because once you get to this step, you are going to know mathematically that this job here and this job here are not exactly the same, right? You know that. And so why should you be spending the exact same amount of time applying for, researching, tailoring your resume and cover letter for this job and this job? Like, that doesn't actually make sense. That is a waste of your time. And that's why you're deleting half of your list, because you know that the bottom half of your list are jobs that you are probably more likely not going to be happy and satisfied with if you even got those jobs to begin with. And this is where you should begin spending the majority of your time focusing on looking for opportunities. And these are just examples of, again, I screen capped this into this presentation. And you can see here, and the reason why I did this one is because you'll see that once I actually did this, my list changed. This was the original list I had when I first made it. After I went and sorted it and mathematically, like, showed me based on my motivations which jobs are actually the best fit for me, this is what you want. This is now you're beginning to see this job search method take shape. Now you begin to kind of see, like, okay, these are the places where I should be spending the majority of my time as I'm searching. And that's why I said, and now you're kind of beginning to understand, like, this is why it's important to be very thorough when you're creating the list. Like I said, you don't want to take a ton of time, but you do want to be thorough, because it's going to give you, at this point, a good idea of where you should be focusing and spending the most of your time on. And then the last step is that once you get to the P, and like I said, it's for postings, you're going to go through and you're going to say, does this company have any postings? And when I say postings, I mean postings for jobs that you're actually interested in. A job could have, 30, 40, 50, could have 100 postings, but if you're not interested in doing any of those jobs, then they have 0. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go down and you're going to write how many open positions do they have for jobs that you're actually interested in. So you'll see I just copied, at this point, you'll notice again, the order of my list changed. And so I copied this list from my motivations into here. It's sorted in that order. And I'll see, and I went through, I just said, at the time when I made this, how many postings do these organizations have for jobs I'm actually interested in? And again, you're not doing a ton of deep research. You're just going to go do this. You're going to write all that stuff down and create the list. And you'll see, like, you don't actually have to do this. But at the end of this, I sorted my list out and my full lamp list into a table like this. Because I know that if I was to do a search, and I think this is old, like, yeah, because when I created it a couple of years back, but you'll see that at the time, these are the places if I was going to be looking for a new opportunity, this is where I should be spending the majority of my time. Why? Because I know that based on the things that are most important to me and the factors that are influencing me to work, I know that these are jobs that are the organizations that I would like to work at the most. I know they have open postings. I know people that live there, and these are going to be the places that I have the best shot of actually getting a job if I started an application process there. It's not guaranteed, but this is going to give you the best shot. The second most amount of time is in this space, and the least is in this. And like I said, you don't have to do this. But the reason why I did this, because to me, I think it creates a very clear and visual representation of, again, if a position comes up and is opening at the University of Arizona, at the University of San Francisco, these jobs are not the same to me. And when you start thinking that when you're applying for every single job, you should be networking, you should be tailoring your resume and cover letter to apply for that position. And that takes a lot of time. And let's say that we were going to ballpark it and say, like, to do all that stuff takes somewhere between 5 and 10 hours. You should be spending that 5 and 10 hours here first, then here, then here. And so if an opportunity came up here and there's nothing else on any of these lists, all right, sure, you can invest your time on there. But if one of these two opportunities that came up here and here, no, you spend your time here first. And then if you can get to it, you spend your time down here next. And so at this point of the process, I kind of like to talk a little bit about the methodology and why you should do this. So this whole process was adapted from a process called the 2-hour job search. It was created by a person by the name of Steve Dalton. I put the information out there because we have adapted this to better fit how I think it works for us at K. You might like the original way that he does it, because he does actually, it's called the 2-hour job search, because you should be able to do basically everything with the LAMP and creating all of that spreadsheet and stuff in 2 hours. I'm not really about that. As you heard me say all the way through that, like, do part of it when you feel like you need to take a break, right? But the whole point of him doing this is that he found that the number one mistake that job searchers were making is that they spent about 80% of their time applying for jobs and 20% of their time networking. And he felt that those statistics should be flipped, right? And when we talk to recruiters, that actually lines up. The thing that we hear consistently is that if you can do networking and make yourself become a known quantity, if you can start getting recommendations from in the company, it actually makes you a much stronger candidate, because you're talking with individuals that have actually already worked at that company. They know how to navigate the application process there, and they can give you the best and most up-to-date information on how to actually successfully apply to that company. And so that's why we keep saying at this point in time, especially during a pandemic, you should be spending a lot of time networking and talking with alums, especially at organizations and companies that you want to work for, right? Typically what you see also is that even though we are now in a digital world where typically almost all job postings are online, still in recent amount of time, about 70% of people hired, they were hired at a company where they had a connection. But also we see that the majority of jobs are still not actually posted online, and they're filled through networking. For an example, ever since our director of our department left, we've had an interim director, and Val's been great. But the college has also been searching for a director for the CCPD for a while. That job only went posted and was publicly posted fairly recently, but that was a job that we were searching for and hiring for. And if I knew somebody who fit those qualifications, I could have told them, like, hey man, like, this job is actually, we're looking for a director. If you are a good fit, you should get in contact with our HR department and apply. And there's a good chance that they could have went and done that, and that job never would have been posted, because they could have just found the candidate that they needed to through networking, right? And so more than ever, it is important that you take the time to network, because networking is how you move yourself from an unknown to a known quantity. Even if you're talking to K alums who you don't know personally well, one of the things I always let students know, and you may have seen from yourself, is that a lot of times when you're filling out online applications, they'll ask you if you know anybody who works at that company. And if you've been networking, you can always say yes. And typically what you may not know is what happens is that when the application comes in, they then go say, like, oh, you know Rachel Wood, I'm going to go ask Rachel if she knows you. And hopefully, I think Rachel will be like, yeah, I know Richard. He's a pretty cool person. You should totally interview him, right? And that's kind of one of the things that networking allows you to do more than any place else. Because when you think about companies that are getting potentially hundreds of applications, being able to get that recommendation from somebody allows your application to go to the top, and it makes you more likely that you're going to be able to actually get some traction and be able to get a recruiter to contact you for an interview. And so typically at this point, you've gone through the entire the entire LAMP process, you have your full spreadsheet. Typically, this is a point where students are just like, all right, I've done this work. It's time for me to start applying. And at that point, I always say, like, no, if you've been paying attention, that is actually not the time that you start applying. This is the time that you actually start networking. Once you actually have this list and you know that there are people who, and K alums or friends or aunts and uncles, cousins, whoever work at the companies that you would like to work out, this is the time that you actually start applying and saying, like, hey, can I actually set up a 30-minute phone call with you? I'd like to talk to you about the organization that you work at. I'm interested in applying to there. Because they're going to be able to give you the best information on how to navigate the application process. They're going to be able to talk to you about the things that need to be on your resume. They're going to be able to talk about the things that you should put in your cover letter. They're going to be able to talk to you about internally things that you need to know, maybe things to avoid putting on your resume and cover letter that are going to make you the most attractive and competitive candidate. And once you have done that networking, that's the time where you should start taking the time to apply, after you've taken the time to create a custom resume and cover letter that fit the position. And with that, that is my presentation on how you should be conducting your job searches and how to use the LAMP method to do a job search.
Thank you so much, Richard. We do have a little bit of time if students have questions. You can unmute yourself. We don't have very many people here, so you can unmute yourself and ask it, or you can ask it in the chat if you'd like. Come on, I know somebody's got a question. Do you have any tips for networking in graduate school? It's a great question. You're talking about in graduate school or trying as you're applying to graduate school? This is a question from Julia. In graduate school, very good. So you're in graduate school. How to utilize networking while you're enrolled in graduate school?
So I think if you are already in graduate school, I think you do have an added benefit because you now have an even expanded network of individuals to be networking with, because you're still a K alum, but also now you are a current student of this new organization and this new school. And so to me at that time, the way I would typically approach is that, like, using those resources, I would basically follow more or less the same way. If I would sit back and say, like, okay, what type of job, where would I like to work after I graduate? And what is my alumni directory? Who do I know? Who can I get in contact with that actually works there? And get them on the phone, because, like, hey man, we're all stuck at home. It's not like they're not available to talk to you. They're totally available to talk to you. And I would reach out to them and say, like, hey, you know what? I'm currently a grad student. I'm looking to graduate in a couple years. I'd like to talk to you about, like, what it's like to work at your organization. Do you have time for a 30-minute phone conversation? And they'll probably be like, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? And, that's kind of the way that I'll approach it. And then typically the things that we always recommend students is, like, when you come to those conversations, just come prepared, asking the questions that are important that you want to know about what it's like to work at that organization. And the other thing I'll say is that, like, it also kind of depends on what you're looking for. I think that networking for during a job search is different than networking potentially, say, if you're just looking for a mentor. I mean, I think the process is more along the same, but it's just kind of like networking to find a job potentially in the first year of grad school. If you have another 2, 3, 4, if you're doing a PhD, maybe 5 or 6 years, like, maybe that doesn't make as much sense. But if you're looking for just, like, for some mentorship, like, you can always reach out to people and just say, like, hey, I just want to kind of start a conversation with you. You're somebody who I really respect because you're in an industry that I'm looking to get into, working for an organization I'd like to work for one day. Do you have time to talk a little bit about what it's like to work there? So
I would also chime in and say that some of the connections, some of my best connections came from other people in my cohort in graduate school. So Richard was talking previously that networking is really just talking. And so it's not that I'm saying that every conversation is just a friendly conversation. You should like capitalize on and make that networking. Just being authentically yourself, you're going to find that there are other people that are in graduate school with you that have had totally different life experiences. Maybe they're in a different age group, whatever. You're going to be learning from them as much or maybe even more so than you are from your professors. So just being mindful of the fact that these people that you're meeting in graduate school could be some of your closest friends, that could be connections that you rely on in the future, because when you're doing those networking conversations, when you're calling up alumni, for example, you're hoping to establish a genuine, authentic connection, because we're, as humans, yes, we're wired because that a lot of us hopefully want to help other people, but we're even more inclined to help people that we're close friends with. So just know that when you're making friends in graduate school, those are obviously all going to be connections for you as well. Thank you, Julia. Does anyone have any other questions? As always, you can always reach out to us. You can contact us via email at career@kazoo.edu or one of our individual emails, or you can schedule an appointment with us in Handshake. I want to thank Richard Sylvester very much for your time. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
And we'll have this recording up soon so that you can tell your friends that missed it if they're interested. So any other questions before we sign off? Can you post the link of the GitHub as well? Yes, I don't think that needs to be on our website, but if you can copy and paste that in here just so that Lily can get it right now. And then I need to add that to our website as well. He's fine. He's driving.
I have to go back, find it. Here we go. There you go.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much again for your time, and hopefully we'll see you next week for our presentation on taxes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.